So here to discuss more is Leslie Sanchez. She's a CBS News political analyst and a Republican strategist. So Leslie, let's talk a little bit about this. I think both Nikki and I were wondering what Finn sort of commented on, because it seemed, at least the portion of the speech that I saw, it didn't seem like the crowd was very enthusiastic. It seemed like they had heard these jokes already, Ron DeSanctimonious, and they weren't reacting. But he said it was an enthusiastic crowd. So despite the fact that Donald Trump's speech yesterday was billed as focusing on education policy, he actually didn't really talk very much about that. He spoke for an hour without raising the issue.
Right.
What's the strategy here? What was he trying to do?
You know, the big part about following Trump through the campaign is there's an expected kind of cadence, talk about policy issues, reform-oriented, changing Washington, run as an outsider. Donald Trump never does any of that. Donald Trump's continuous ammo is to aim and do, politics of personal attacks. And we saw that throughout the 2016 primary. You're seeing a repeat of it again. And the interesting part is we never really expect former President Trump to come in heavy on the policy efforts. He knows there is momentum within the base Republican voter, especially primary voters, on education reform, meaning particularly Parents' Bill of Rights. You saw it in Virginia. You certainly saw it in Florida. There's a momentum and a groundswell around that, and the president is jumping to some extent on that bandwagon, but he's not leading that effort, which is one of the reasons you don't hear him talk about it as much. It's peppered in and maybe delayed in his conversation. Right now, it is about the sharp elbows and trying to show Republican primary voters that he is still the top contender and he should be seen as the only nominee for the Republican Party.
Leslie, let's talk about the news, the bank news the last few days. It seems both parties are trying to deflect blame for the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who is the ranking member of the Financial Services Committee, spoke to Red and Blue anchor Caitlin Huey-Burns about this last night. Let's listen to what she had to say.
We're going to hold hearings very soon, and whatever legislation we need to do to ensure the public, so that the public can have confidence in our banking systems. And we'll come up with final solutions. So it is not one person. It is, the feds. It is the FDIC, it is the Treasury, it's the White House, it's the Congress, and we figure out what we have learned, what we have done, and what we need to do. It is a collaborative effort.
Leslie, how are Republicans viewing this crisis?
The effort and the lens of that is seen through the continuous lens of a stalled or slowing economy. Numbers will tell you, an economist will tell you differently, but how people fundamentally feel at home in terms of the pressure of higher inflation, higher prices, how it's affecting their pocketbook, and then they see this amped up energy and the fear there's run on the bank of Silicon Valley Bank, and then the trickle effect that has been the conversation. Is it going to affect their savings? And while FDIC does have the threshold to protect a lot of working class families, middle class families, there's a lot of small businesses in that who are really now starting to fear that they are heading back a repeat of 2008. Republicans see this as an opportunity in terms of that swing. The interesting part, though, Republicans haven't always been big on the regulatory aspects. They may say that we put in measures after 2008, but I don't think there's a lot of confidence, arguably, on either side with respect to who can handle this banking situation. And there's an opportunity to move forward with some very solid measures to reassure voters. I think at this point, nobody's really stepped in that arena. And even the quick measure by President Biden on Sunday, which was necessary to solve that, Republicans have been slow to respond in a way that's really give a lot of primary voters confidence. But that's yet to be seen.
Leslie, really quickly, Tucker Carlson, the Fox News host, sent out a questionnaire to potential 2024 hopefuls or people who we think might be hopefuls. Ron DeSantis answered one of the questions about the war in Ukraine and whether or not it was a vital American interest, and he said no. What does this suggest about where the GOP stands in regards to America's role in the world, isolationist sentiments?
That's going to be one of the biggest distinctions between Donald Trump on that measure. I think that you're going to have a lot of hawks and people that are certainly concerned about a growing threat and especially with Russia and Ukraine, and they don't necessarily see it in line with where DeSantis is. But I think for primary voters who want to focus on the economy, want to focus on shoring up energy security, financial security, the border security, that is the type of message and tone that they will respond to. But I think bigger picture, when you get to a general election, that's going to be problematic.
All right, Leslie Sanchez, thanks so much.
Thank you.